Hello, Michael Stack here, principal of AMAX and founder of COMPClub. So the dust has settled in the WCRI conference that occurred about a week and a half ago. And I've had a chance to look through my notes and I want to share some of my top takeaways from the sessions. The first session was called The Impact of Fee Schedules on Case Shifting in Workers' Compensation. And what they did in this session was really ask the question, do higher fee schedules end up having an impact on the number of cases that are considered workers' compensation? And what they did is they took a look over across a number of different states and the fee schedules in those states. This is going to be a very rough draft outline of what that graph looked like. But essentially there was a number of states that were in the middle that had very similar fee schedules. And there were some outliers that were high and low. And it was ultimately the comparison of those outlier states that led to the data in this study. And basically they looked at the two different types of injuries, the two different really classifications or main classifications of injuries. And we all know there are some injuries in workers' comp that are very clearly defined. They're clear as to the causation of that injury. And there are some that are unclear, or much more gray as far as that causation, and much more up to the doctor's discretion to classify that particular injury. Now these clear cases are typically trauma cases. These are physical injuries that require immediate medical attention right after the injury. And these unclear or gray area claims, these are more the back injuries, the strains, the shoulders, and the knee injuries. And again, those are causation is much more gray or unclear, and it's very much up to the discretion of the doctor to define whether or not that injury would be considered workers' compensation. So the next thing they did is they look at these fee schedules, the impact that the fee schedule had on the number of claims that were considered workers' comp for that particular type of injury. Here's what was interesting and really was the conclusion of the study. In these clear cases, the clearly defined cases, that the causation was very much known and undisputed. There was no change whatsoever in the number of cases that were considered workers' compensation. So when the causation was clearly defined, no change in the number of workers' comp cases. In these unclear or gray area cases where it was up to the discretion of the doctor to define whether or not it was a workers' compensation case, what they found was a 20% increase in the fee schedule ended up leading to a 6% greater odds that case was considered workers' compensation. So a 20% increase in the fee schedule for the provider, for that back injury, a 6% greater odds that case would be considered workers' compensation. And they equated this down to a 1.5% increase then in costs. Now 1.5% might not sound like a large percentage, but from a state level, from a policymaker level, that can equate to millions and millions of dollars. So what does this mean then for you? What sort of an impact did these numbers and the results of this study have on your organization? My takeaway from this is really just the understanding that this tendency exists. The understanding that this incentive exists at the provider level. From a work comp management standpoint then, the action step that I would recommend is to have a medical review become a standard part of your company compensability investigation. Again, I'll say that one more time. So my recommendation from a work comp management standpoint is to have a medical review become a standard part of your company's compensability investigation. Because of this tendency, particularly on these unclear or gray area claims, bringing that expertise to the table on your side to ensure that you're not accepting claims that you should not be, thereby paying costs that you shouldn't be paying. Because again, in workers' compensation, your success is defined by your integrity. So be great.